Looking to Play Right, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. You can call me H.
And I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me Q. You know, H, one of the games I played recently was The Medium on Xbox. And there, something about that game has a little bit of playwright flavor in there. It feels like the idea of rendering two worlds at the same time and cutting and stuff in between them it's so good in concept. Then in execution, it's maybe a little bit more, pedestrian in the way that it ends up feeling. But I thought that was really interesting, and I wonder if it's a game you would check out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it a run before the end of the year, just so I can kind of, I like to play the big releases when they're made available to me. And since it's available on Game Pass, then it's literally no barrier. But I'm kind of curious because they pitch this two worlds thing as like a major technical accomplishment that couldn't have happened in previous generation consoles and stuff like that. And I just don't really understand that because we've had, I mean, and this is just me, Monday morning quarterbacking completely out of my depth and completely out of my field. But we've had split screen games before. That's all rendering within the same world. But we've had split screen that does render objects differently, like Kane and Lynch, in which some of the enemies are rendered differently between the two players' screens. We've had, it seems to me like you could render everything in one world and just kind of turn on and off interactability with one side of the screen or the other, and then do some different kind of shaders and textures to kind of differentiate the two screens. We've been able to control multiple characters with the same control inputs before. It seems like every piece of that puzzle has been solved separately, but maybe not all together. So I'm curious if it justified being a kind of monumental programming task, or whether there would have been simpler ways to accomplish this that wouldn't require a kind of state-of-the-art Xbox One X or Xbox Series X technology.
Yeah, that's a good question. I had those feelings myself. There is this, I guess maybe you could claim we couldn't do it in this fidelity before, but that's everything that new consoles do.
Yeah.
I do think that there are some things that are kind of fun and unique. For example, if one world has a door and obstruction, if either world obstructs you, then you can't pass in the other world. So I guess maybe in some way they're both talking to each other, but to your point, maybe it's just a transparent object in the other world that I can't. I can't see. It's tough for me to say, and certainly, I think that there are maybe a couple points where the game feels like it's dipping just below 30 frames a second. So I don't know what the hardware is really being taxed on. It was kind of a cool game, and one of the things I enjoyed about it is it's been, the better part of a decade since I have played a game that really feels like a Resident Evil, like an early Resident Evil. You go down and you get the single positioned shots in hallways and the tank control and the whole thing. And it was kind of, fun to go back to something like that. And, it was short enough where I didn't get entirely, frustrated or bored with it.
Okay, that's cool. I recently played through Heaven's Vault. I just finished that one. I had started it probably a year or two ago, but just got around to finishing it recently. And it's a really good, really brilliant game. One of those that kind of in concept feels like it was made for me specifically. But, I hadn't put in the time to see the story all the way to the end until recently, which is entirely on me. But what a cool concept, a game about being an archaeologist, kind of traveling this galaxy of different planets and uncovering dig sites and unearthing kind of ancient relics that help you find other kind of centers of this ancient civilization so that you can read the writings on the walls and on these objects that you find and try to decode this ancient language. by essentially like you're given a string of text, and using context clues, you can work out what some of the simpler strings mean. So you'll see like a inscription on a statue of a water goddess, and it's one word. You can infer that it means water. And so when you see that symbol again, then you can, kind of plug it into context there and try to work out the words around it in a slightly longer string of text.
Oh, wow.
And then you can start to...
And they leave that all to the player? There's no like sort of prompt or anything?
There are prompts. But what it does is that like every time you uncover like a string of ancient text, it's a language that's unbroken by spaces or anything like that. And so you really have to like figure out and understand like which symbols, there are certain symbols that mean, that kind of like represent parts of speech that you can start to like recognize the structure of certain words. And there are certain symbols that basically like invert the meaning of a word. So, if there was if you know the word good, then you can look for a certain symbol that will transform that into the word bad. As you go through the game, you basically can plug any of the words or had previously guessed the meaning of into the structure of new lines of text that you uncover by kind of drag and dropping these strings of ancient symbols into, where they would appear in this new kind of line of text.
Oh.
And then it breaks it apart and prompts you to guess at the meaning of any words that you can't work out just yet. And so you're making all these guesses as you go, and it gives you like 3 possible options for what the word could mean. And so you make your best guess, and then the next time that you see that word in context, you kind of have it'll either validate that the word is correct, or you can change your answer. And so it's kind of this roundabout way of like working out the entire structure of this ancient, dead language. It's really interesting, and it feels like doing a lot of mental work, but it's something I've never really been challenged to do in a game before. It feels very reliant on the player's understanding of this system in a way that really reminded me of like Outer Wilds.
Yeah.
And, it does follow a pretty straightforward story. And I'll say that unlike Outer Wilds, it doesn't let you jump ahead of the story if you feel like you understand something. Like you still have to arrive at those juncture points by way of the main story. Whereas in Outer Wilds, if you understand something, you can immediately act on that knowledge. There's no real barriers story-wise that keep you from, you could go straight for the exit or the end of the story if you know kind of how all the mechanics of the universe work. So, it's a little bit more kind of close-ended in that regard, but overall, like really, really super ambitious project. Obviously they created this entire history. When you talk about the lore of Dark Souls or something like that, like, all of these lands have their own histories and lineages of kings and gods and stuff like that. And that's interesting. But like this one has a timeline that you basically have from the beginning of the game that, you'll notice at the bottom of your screen. Sometimes you'll receive little prompts like, you visited Iox for the first time, and that's a event that happened in the timeline of the game. And so you can click on that little timeline and scroll through all of the different things that you had done in your adventure. You found your robot, you spoke to the professor for the first time, you found an ancient dig site on this and this planet, and then you can kind of zoom out, and it goes all the way back to like 8,000 years previously. Like the empire was established, the race of ancient people died out. This statue that is just kind of a rubble ruin now was built, and all of these events that your character would have access to this information because she's a university student who's an archaeologist specifically studying history. And so it doesn't feel inappropriate, but it's just like there's so much information that's available to you that it really feels like you are jumping into a universe that is fully fleshed out, instead of what a lot of games do where there will be 6 books that repeat that are only 2 pages long. You know, this feels like it has like a full history that's well considered and internally consistent. It's really, really ambitious project. So it's by the creators of 80 Days, if people have lingering affection for that wonderful text-based game, also by Inkle. So yeah, Heaven's Vault, really, really, really interesting title. Bit slow-paced, but it feels appropriate for the type of game that it is. So give it a look. Good one.
That's really cool. Yeah, and it sounds like an H game and a challenge that we've actually tried to address before on the show, right? Where like, how do you narrow down the entirety of language for someone in a way that still feels satisfying, in a way that feels like they still, figured it out.
Anyways, we've gone on for too long already. Let's get to our video game pitches for the day.
Yes.
I'll be going first with a kind of a silly physics puzzler, not like a clumsy physics puzzler, but something that's more along the lines of like Kill It With Fire or something like that, where it's like, it is physics-based, but it's not meant to kind of trip you up. But anyways, a kind of lighthearted physics-based puzzle in which you have to bury a beeping smoke detector underneath objects in a room to try to keep it quiet. And so basically you're trying to stack objects in whatever way is the most soundproof, with the noise being your kind of primary antagonist in this case. So I'm going to start the clock there.
So wait a minute. Now here I'm trying to stop the smoke detector from going off, or I'm trying to get away from the sound.
Let's say that you have like a work call that you need to be on in like 2 minutes. And so you have like a very tight time limit that you have to like bury the smoke detector underneath something so that you can, get to your job interview or whatever without it beeping constantly in the background. And basically the better job that you do of masking the beep, the higher score you're going to get.
I love the idea of giving the player in something like in Alien Isolation, we had that sci-fi 80s future version of kind of a motion detector, which is just that kind of blip, blip, blip thing. I wonder if there's like a retroactive sci-fi 80s version of like a decimal meter where you get some piece of tech that's like just letting you know it's at 63 decimals. You could probably go lower, and then even give someone like, hey, reach under 40 decimals for the next 2 minutes.
So so part of the challenge is you have to think about the density of certain objects, or maybe I don't know what the right word would be, the squishiness. Like if you think about pillows can easily like wrap around an object where something like a DVD case would just kind of lie flatly on top. Thinking about creating and constructing these big kind of elaborate towers of objects to try to mask the sound. I don't know that many games in which sound and decibels and kind of density of objects and acoustics are like taken into heavy consideration. So I'm interested in finding ways to kind of gamify and maybe even for the first time, or for a relatively unexplored degree, mechanically represent acoustics within a game engine.
Yeah, like having, right, like you said, object density. I also love, like, there are many ways. Well, I mean, maybe scientifically, there's only one way to stop sound, which is like stop those waves from traveling or cut down the vibrations. But the idea of, in the earlier levels, maybe you throw a couple pillows on something or a pillow on it and it's good. But then in the later levels, when you're really surrounded by, hard objects, you get to the type of situation where maybe you're even trying to redirect the sound, so it's like pointing away from a place that's listening or something like that.
So yeah, I mean, the thing about like smoke detectors in particular is that they are kind of non-directional, though they beep in every direction, and they have like that specific frequency that like obviously is meant to alert people. It's like you don't want a smoke detector to go unnoticed. I always thought it was kind of funny back in elementary school when they used to have those fire drills and everything, and they would blare these loudspeaker, this horrible chirping noise that bake your ears from anywhere within the school. And it never really seemed necessary because every child is listening for any possible excuse to get out of the classroom. Like if a smoke detector went off 2 buildings over, like everybody in the classroom would notice.
Right. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So is the like entire level aware of the sound, or is it more a point that's measuring the sound, and like depending on where the sound thing is placed, you actually get into a situation where you're like, okay, well now I'm going to, just try and get it away from, well, I guess if it's a smoke detector, maybe it's not mobile. Although some smoke detectors, I guess, are movable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think in this case, like you would have taken it off the ceiling and you're looking for a place to bury it because you can't really bury something that's on the ceiling.
Right.
So maybe you have kind of 2 points of interaction. Like you can move the smoke detector, you can move the objects to try to like stack them on top of it. And maybe you can move your laptop to kind of have this job interview, but you have to stay within the room. And so there are kind of hard limits there, but within the room, then you can, there's some degree of being able to move about and try to find like the quietest corner. Do you spend more time trying to isolate your laptop, or do you spend more time trying to bury the signal of the smoke detector?
That's cool. Yeah, I could definitely see a mechanic where I'm even ripping up carpet to see if I can roll it up or fold it over or something like that if I was able to. Yeah, and even if it becomes hard objects, right? It's like it's more about closing the gaps and trying to seal it in all the way instead of like muffle it is what you could kind of do with a smart or not smart, soft object. Noise canceling headphones have a technology where they're playing like negative opposite signal. I wonder if you can like cover up the sound with like a like a series of I don't know, not negative, but like complementary sounds or something like that, kind of make it fall into the mix of music or something.
To try to find some sort of a rhythm in the except, fire or smoke detectors don't really beep regularly. It's kind of like once every 40 seconds or something like that. But I guess for the sake of gameplay, it would be more kind of a regular, every 3 seconds or something, just so that, you have a 2-minute timer, you get to hear the beep more than 3 times.
I'm trying to think about if I'm almost going Pokemon Snap with my brain here, and like, is there a mechanic where I can convince a cat to come sit on the detector or something like that?
Thinking about like piling objects up, there's the risk reward of like the higher you pile something, obviously the more resistant or more sound resistant the whole system's going to be, but you risk the entire stack toppling over, or maybe a rupture at the top of the stack is going to undo a lot of your work underneath, or maybe you end up breaking some of the objects at the bottom if there's too much weight placed upon them.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, and I think like if the sound is also directional in a way where you can kind of point the thing away from something and then try and like direct the sound waves around so that it's pointing in an opposite direction, or it's like headed down. I'm trying to think of what other like fun could we destroy it maybe in some way, or not that destruction is fun, but like, we've done like the complementary sounds, the cover it up, the muffle it, and then is there like a some sort of system of being able to eliminate the sound entirely? I don't know.
I mean, I feel like that kind of steps away from the core challenge of the game, because destroying the smoke detector would
then become the object.
Like a bad strategy in real life. Like, there has to...
That's true.
You get in trouble from your landlord if you ended up tampering with with that device. But I mean, and within the context of the game, like the object is to do this kind of sound-based puzzle, and just destroying it would just be like the easy way out of every stage, really.
Maybe if you learn the sound, like the beep pattern of the, well, there's not a phase of this where I'm actually on the little Zoom call or something, right? Because I like the idea of like learning the pattern or something, and then making sure you kind of grunt or cough or sneeze every single time that the beep would be heard if it's not a constant noise.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you could kind of time cover-up sounds if you could work out the rhythm. Anyways, let's close that one down and let's give it a name. How about so beeping annoying?
Oh yeah, I like that. I was gonna almost go in the direction of like be quiet or something like that, but no, that's cool.
Shut the beep up.
Shut the beep up. That's good.
Oh, I like it. Oh, that's fun. Q, what are you bringing us today?
I don't know if this is a game, but I suspect it might be, but I'm going to pitch it anyway. There is, for a while, the world was crazy about Surgeon Simulator, especially earlier in the Twitch revolution, if you will. But one of the things I would really like to see is a very detailed dental simulator, not for education.
All right, starting the clock. So you evoked Surgeon Simulator. Is this something that is silly and hyperbolic, or something that is more kind of realistic?
I think so. Have you ever seen, I think it's silly. Have you ever seen, this is going to be an incredibly deep cut reference. I don't know if anybody knows about this movie. The movie called The Dentist.
The Dentist? No, I don't.
It is a campy, either 80s or 90s horror movie where this guy kind of is a dentist, but he also has OCD and he loses his mind. Something his wife cheats on him and he goes crazy and he kills everybody. A really horrible story, but it really plays on the fears of people who, don't want to go to the dentist or don't like the dentist. There's the drilling and the sound of the drill. And he has one patient where he's kind of doing some of that drilling and then kind of like mindlessly, slips and it goes right into the gum, and it's just this horror show. It's just this, I didn't expect to get so dark on this episode, but the idea of, in the same way in Surgeon Simulator, we're cracking open a rib cage, just crack, and then, we're in. The dentist has so many tools, the like spray water in the mouth clamp, the tooth pulling, the drilling, the filling, the candlestick making. No. But I just think that there's so many dental specific tools that are all very finicky, right? They're all very like, hey, you gotta, there's a reason why they're trained experts. And so I think you could really make a mess of some mouths.
That's interesting. So, I do wonder if being able to perform these kind of dental procedures would kind of demystify the process and make it less scary when I have to have somebody drill into my own mouth, or whether it would make it more scary because you have a better idea of what's going on.
Right. Does this scare you even further from the dentist? That's a good question. The way that I was thinking about it is like like a surgeon simulator, like maybe the key beats are there of like, hey, you gotta access the heart. You gotta find the tooth that needs filling, for example. And, the person can't tell you because they're just kind of like, their mouth's pried open. Why you wouldn't have gotten the information beforehand. But the ability to kind of go in there, like use that little, what is it? It's like a little metal hook or a scraper or something that they sometimes will use to like push on a tooth. And if things kind of, I don't know if they're softer or something, or if the enamel's bad, they'll be like, okay, that's the tooth that actually needs treatment, that sort of thing.
It would be interesting to basically be given the kind of tools of a dentist and have to learn to identify cavities using x-rays, how to take, good x-rays in the first place, how to properly, floss and clean. And I mean, I feel like there's a lot of kind of educational value in here.
Yeah, in fact, before the episode, I went on just Google to search out dental simulator, and there is something on the Microsoft Store for it, but it seems to be an educational, like specifically targeted at education type of thing. And so I think that like having one of the in Surgeon Simulator, the patient is usually unconscious, I believe. I don't know if I've ever seen like a really lively Surgeon Simulator patient, but maybe that's possible. But I like the idea of, in dentistry, the person is potentially awake, right? Like you have to properly numb an area with a couple of needles and then find out like, can they feel anything here? And you have to go by their feedback. So having a lot of like patient check-in or patient interaction, I think would be a fun and probably hilarious mechanic to just see their tongue flapping around as they try and speak to you.
And, maybe there could be kind of like in Flight Simulator, how you can kind of turn on and off the helpful guidances. Like maybe there would be a visual indicator of areas that are or are not properly numbed, depending on where you've, injected numbing when that's necessary, or maybe areas that are more sensitive to poking and prodding.
Right. The goal is definitely never to hurt the patient. I think that's actually still probably the goal for Surgeon Simulator too. But one of the things I think is interesting too is like some dental procedures are, I guess like surgeries, they're not like entirely necessary. For example, right? You might be in a situation where, the patient wants gold veneers, or so another patient might want tooth caps. Somebody might want, let's get the crazy like alt culture person who wants their teeth filed into sharp fangs or something like that. And can you pull all that off?
Filed into fangs. That's an interesting.
Yeah, some people do it. Freaks me out.
I mean, maybe even kind of having this could be DLC, but fixing teeth with braces and having to kind of plan out the course of correction there. I mean, this could turn into a real kind of one of those hard sims, like a farming simulator, like games that are very kind of true to the actual experience of performing the tasks.
Yeah, one of the things that I like very jealously, I want to be on the other side of that weird vacuum hose that all dentists have access to. Like it's, I don't know, it's sucking up spit. It's doing, God knows, maybe it's getting blood out of there. And then there's the spray thing to clean their work. So it feels like a very finicky profession, but yeah, also maybe it's something that, like you said, demystifies for some people dentistry if they want to play it straight and play it seriously. And for others, it could be a very strange, wacky time.
It's fun. I don't know if there are enough of those games that are that forgiving, like for however you want to play it. I know that Flight Sim has, it is pretty robust options. So you can play it as like a hardcore simulator, or you could just kind of turn on a lot of the automatic pilot options and just kind of fly around to your heart's content, make it feel kind of arcadey, but usually you kind of have to choose one or the other.
Oh, yeah. You can kind of toggle it back and forth. I like that. I even like the idea of, getting access to like the X-ray tools and having to go in and kind of like, it's almost the like stealth game equivalent of like scouting out your run or something like that. You're like, okay, if we, this tooth's impacted and let's go over here and here, that sort of thing. Sometimes you hear a dentist, if somebody needs a root canal, for example, they're like, well, we actually have to, remove all pieces of this tooth, or people with, ingrown there's so many weird kind of crazy teeth situations. It's kind of actually a miracle that humans have existed this long with all of our bad teeth. What other ways do you think, if we want to go sillier or crazier, do you think we do to craze it up a little bit?
I mean, the Surgeon Simulator route of everything being, if somebody's having a problem with their teeth, then you could just like clumsily use a hammer to bash out the tooth that you want to, and then use like a vacuum to suck out the little pieces. Like, obviously that could be, that's pretty horrifying to think about, but so is the stuff in Surgeon Simulator, and that game seems to be doing just fine. So I'm sure there's a market for it. And, all of those like Elsa dentist games that you see on mobile, like, I think there's definitely room for grotesque dentistry simulators.
Yeah, and I even start thinking about grotesque. Speaking of grotesque, here's something that could be a potential wacky grotesque turn is adding in the layer. Maybe you have like a stockpile of different types of false teeth, and you've got shark teeth in there and all sorts of crazy access to all sorts of wild teeth. And so you can really, and at the end of somebody's procedure, you get them to like smile for you as you take a photo. Let's get a photo mode in here too.
That's fun. Let's go ahead and close that one down and come up with a name.
I mean, Dentist Simulator's the obvious one, but I like it, maybe it's you do like Dentist Simulator : $1 Million Smile or something like that.
I'm trying to think if there's I feel like I'm very close to something.
It's on the tip of your teeth.
How about oh, I like this. How about dental hijinks?
You did it. You
dental hygiene.
Oh, that's good.
Very silly.
I think if I named it like if it was like pearly whites or something like that, it would almost be too dark if you really messed someone up.
Let's go to our community now and see what you have submitted. We don't have emails from our community members, but as we mentioned last week, we have precious few episodes until our kind of regular recording schedule is wound down. So if you would like to submit something for the show, do so within the next couple of months. It'll definitely get on the show. Everything that's sent in will be read, I guess within reasonable limits, but get that in quickly so that we can get to it on the show and discuss your game, make it somewhat of a reality. But anyways, let's go to another email that has appeared in our inbox. I'm guessing not specifically written for the show, but let's see what we can do with it. This comes from the AMS Soundings March 2021. This is the American Meteorological Society.
Nice.
Whose top headline for this issue of their newsletter, apparently, that we've been signed up for, is Spotlight Women in Science. All are invited to celebrate women in science on the International Women's Day on 8 March at 5:00 p.m. at the AMS board on Representation, Accessibility, Inclusion, and Diversity, or BRAID. And the Earth Sciences Women's Network, ESWN, will co-sponsor a virtual event featuring keynote speakers Dr. Candace Boyd. Space is limited, so register now. This is a very long newsletter, so let's see if we could do anything with just that top story. There's not a lot of substance to go on there. It's just kind of
it's a lot of
women being in science and a lot of scheduling for where you can hear talks about inclusiveness, which is all great in real life. But let's see what we can use to kind of inspire our creative imaginations with that. I'm going to start the clock.
What if we did? So, I mean, I go straight to why don't we assemble like the superhero team of science women? And you have like a different scientist of each type, and they all have special abilities, and you go on different missions together, and, they all need to kind of work together to make their way on these adventures.
Or what if it was like I think I've even pitched in the past a fighting game that's based on historical characters. Like, I think like a fighting game is a great way of kind of adding a fantastical over-the-top element to exaggerate the contributions of, to turn the contributions of a particular woman in science into like a fantasy moveset in a way that, feels very, like, I wish I had attended this lecture. I could come with more kind of examples of famous women in science, but like Madame Curie and Hedy Lamarr Hedy Lamarr could have radiation based abilities, and like fighting games are really great ways to kind of like immediately literalize the kind of special abilities of people in a way that can make it very kind of memorable and like easy to like can help you with your homework.
Yeah, and I one of the things that I agree that fighting games are good at kind of like, yeah, you find moves and stuff that kind of distill characters down into and express those characters in some way. Like here I am over at internationalwomen'sday.com. We've got Katherine Johnson, the NASA space scientist. So of course we can give her all sorts of cosmic move sets. But one thing I do, I guess to the solving missions or something together, my mind also kind of went to the beat 'em up space, because I like the idea of the fighting game and giving everybody abilities, but I like the idea that they're kind of working together rather than trying to tear each other apart. But yeah, we've got, this is one of my favorite ones. This is women in STEM, and one of them is Susan Kerr, who's actually a designer that's close to my heart. She made the original Macintosh icon set. So that little smiley computer and the trash can and the bomb and the watch and all that sort of stuff. So certainly she's going to have some fun, maybe even prop based abilities in this thing.
So yeah, I mean, the beat 'em up is kind of the sister genre to the fighting game anyways. I think all women fighting games have tended to have a pretty spotty history as far as appropriate representation and respectful representation of those involved.
Well, actually, maybe that's a case. That's a case to do the fighting game, then, right? Like, let's actually do some amount of justice to 50% of the world's population.
It could be fun. I'm just kind of looking through like famous women in science before, and just like so many of these like inventions and mathematical pursuits and all of this would make such interesting move sets. Like Rosalind Franklin was an inventor who did a lot of work in kind of understanding DNA and RNA structures, did a lot of work in X-ray. It would be kind of funny if somebody who was famous for using X-rays could like summon skeletons to help her out. Like I would want something that's very like over the top, like Skullgirls, games that feel very fantastical and very magical realist, rather than being, because nobody wants to see like the like actual realistic, people who have dedicated their lives to academia, like punch and kick each other. Like they would have to be like superhero versions of themselves.
Sure. Or you give all the characters, you call them like, here we have Clara Barton, who was the founder of the American Red Cross. Well, Mortal Kombat has shown us you can do quite a bit with a blood character. You can kind of fashion weapons. You can freeze it. You can suck blood out of things. So I do and like
even both Guilty Gear and Skullgirls have medically themed fighters already. So there's templates to draw from.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like the idea, or maybe she's a support character, right? And she can heal herself or something. She's got those kind of like health regen abilities. You mentioned, Mary Curie, like so many, like now we've got like radiation powers and stuff that you can do. And gosh, I like the idea of the fighter. Maybe it's too much to ask us like what unique spin would you have on a fighter of this type? Surely there's perhaps been all male gender fighters before. Like that has to have existed in video games, because video games, right?
What if there's a fighting game that kind of progresses through history, through time periods, and each of the fighters' move sets kind of, I guess, grow and evolve based on where the stage is in history. So I'm thinking kind of like
Oh.
Sid Meier's Civilization type of progression through time, where you have the same move set, but you're working with different materials. And so some fighters are very incentivized to push time forward. Ada Lovelace, who is going to benefit from having, stronger mechanical and computational abilities, is very deadly in the kind of mechanical, industrial, digital ages, even past times at which they would have been alive. You can kind of project into the future what their inventive minds would have been doing at that time, versus, somebody who relies upon more kind of natural sciences, chemists and stuff like that. I mean, I guess that is still kind of bounded by or improved by advances in science, but maybe there would be kind of a push-pull between, or I mean, even better, like Amelia Earhart. She's not a scientist. It doesn't really feel fair to include her among, but like just as an example,
she was a technical
before the time
person.
of, yeah, sure. Before the time of like mechanical flying machines, she would be fairly underpowered, whereas she would really kind of dominate in the kind of industrial age going forward. And so, there's a kind of push-pull between like trying to keep time from advancing forward, keeping things within a comfortable time period for some fighters versus others that are trying to speed up the kind of flow of time. And maybe there's ways to turn the hourglass backwards. Maybe there's ways to, like Def Jam Icon, where you can, through a series of button inputs, you can change the background music to suit your character instead of the other and give yourself kind of the stage advantage.
As you're describing the idea of the time stuff, I still get pulled in the direction of at least a beat 'em up kind of side game, because I love the idea of, not trying to make fun, not trying to cast light on this stuff, but like, if you were going to be Jane Goodall, for example, right? Like the way that she went to Africa, she studied the chimpanzees for I forget how, like years and years and years she had to live among them. But like every woman in any sort of science profession, any sort of breakthrough profession where they made a name for themselves in these male-dominated industries really had to fight like hell to earn that. And so there is this kind of, I think, fun and iconic imagery of like the suffragette movement as a beat 'em up of like groups of women just kicking all these shitty sexist men's asses, and at the end of the level, like you get the right to vote or something. I don't know. There's like and you can attach like a lightly threaded story that actually like tells the truth of like what happened in those moments, or you cast each of these moments of advancement of women through history into an actual fight, right? Where it was like where you have your character and you're literally like beating up on Richard Nixon or something like that. Like you can actually, but like cast the player always as the female, right? Like make the other, the male characters.
I feel like that's still kind of a way of like centering these women's narratives around men. And even though it is, fairly often that the like major adversity that is placed in front of them is because of their gender and because of, society pushing back against, what they could be doing. But in a way, it kind of removes the major advancement that they made was being brilliant minds in science. And, rather than being defined by the kind of societal, arbitrary, petty roadblock that people put up just because they're closed-minded. It's like the thing I like about fighting games is that, even though it does seem adversarial, there's also a certain kind of amount of parity between the contestants and a certain kind of like sporting respect between them. Everyone's kind of on an equal playing field. They're only kind of facing the challenge that's in front of them, this other person that's challenging them for maybe, depending on how the story is structured, could be, just for sport and for fun, for good kind of sparring, rather than, again, being kind of defined by the leash around them, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, just another detail that I think is like really healthy is also finally like a fighting game that's centered around women, where you can like, these are women wearing lab coats and sweaters, like, in the case of Jane Goodall, you've got that sort of like survival-esque attire, but
she could call in gorillas to help. Oh, that's wonderful.
That's right. She's got the pet build.
Yes.
But yeah, I love that the idea of you could get such a talented. In my head, I'm imagining this is in like the really classical 2D, heavily animated, very illustrated. Because just some of these, people existed 100 years ago, so you're not going to get great. Well, maybe you could do cool 3D reference of them, but I love the idea of it being a very expressive, very I don't know if detailed, but like very colorful, very well realized versions of these characters, and going through the archives and behind the scenes and saying, well, we saw this clip and this clip, and we took this mannerism and that mannerism and kind of translated it to how the character moves and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'd like kind of an above and beyond kind of larger than life depiction of each character, rather than like how they would realistically look, have the kind of big flowing outfits and the, wild magical aspects of, that you would get in a Street Fighter or a Guilty Gear or something like that. Like make them all kind of anime fighters, rather than, the kind of grainy black and white photos that people know them by, make them folk heroes in a way. But we're out of time on that one. Let's give this a name.
If it's a fighter, do we need? Oh man, I'm trying to think of like something that feels like a slick anime sounding thing. What if? Okay, it is science. It is famous science. Is this Chromosome X?
Chromosome X. That's really cool, actually. It does sound like a Japanese fighting game.
Right, and then of course 3 years later they can sell us Chromosome X ES Plus Redux.
Yeah, that's cool. I think stylistically it would be stylized as the like Chi Greek letter. Just knowing Japanese fighting games and the way they like to play with their, I guess they would read it as like Chromosome Cross, which also is kind of a cool
Chromosome Cross
crossover fighter.
Pretty good. I think can I switch my vote?
Yeah, we could write it the same way, it's just pronounced differently. Anyways, that's right. That was sent in by the American Meteorological Society avid listeners over at the AMS. Thank you very much for sending that in, and happy Women's History Month and belated International Women's Day as well. Not that will be the only pitch that we do that involves women of any kind. We hope that most of our pitches are fairly gender neutral, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm so concerned about Sims. Like, I have to imagine I'm not even thinking about who is the simulator.
Anyways, if you would like to send something in on some of these final regular episodes of Playwright, you can do so by going to playwrightcast.com/pitch. You can email us playwrightcast@gmail.com. You can tweet us at playwrightcast, and in all of those instances, it is spelled playwrightecast.com.
.gov.co.uk. Special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song Hello World off the album Blue Noise. And when you're listening to things, there are other great shows that will continue on the Canon Rids Network to listen to. Canon Rids, Sound of Play, and The Sausage Factory.
To take us out of the show, we have a redacted game. This one I'm going to have to apologize in advance for.
Oh.
It is a horrible description, but the description is so bad that it stuck out to me. And so I will be offering you auxiliary clues, but I'm going to read the description unredacted, which is a testament to how poor this description is. But I was just baffled that this is the official Metacritic description of the game. So a silly physics puzzler in which you have to... Oh, no, sorry. That is my pitch for the day. It's like, that's not the right genre at all. Okay. The operative word here is cute, on the order of Fraggles, M&M spokes candies, and the luggage of R2... Oh, sorry. And the language of R2-D2. And that is the entire description.
What the hell? Okay, well, it's cute. That's what I know. And it's a Star Wars adjacent, or is that part of why it's such a bad description?
The operative word here is cute, on the order of Fraggles, M&M spokes candies, and the language of R2-D2. So cute in ways that maybe evoke those, but
right. Smaller, maybe more stout characters that are beloved by someone. Hopefully it's not the green M&M. But the... Okay, so we just really care about cute, and there's maybe a silly-ish mascot.
So we can go straight to metadata if you want. You know, there's no way that you're going to be able to... It'd be very impressive if if you pulled it out at this point. But what kind of metadata would you prefer?
Give me... I would like to know its accolades, if that's...
In fact, it doesn't have any accolades. It does not have a Metascore, which might be because it's too old to have Metascores. It does not have any critic reviews listed. It has a few user reviews that give it a collated 7.8 user score.
Okay, so this is an older
game. Again, to kind of contextualize it in time, it is rated K through A.
Oh, K through A. Holy cannoli. Early days. The operative. Okay. This is so broad. Is this a Nintendo franchise?
This feels broad enough to kind of turn into a game of 20 questions, but since the description itself is so bad, I wouldn't normally allow a question that broad, but I'll go ahead and give a no.
Okay. All right. So I'll try and be real with the guesses here. The operative word is cute, like the M&M, a Fraggle, an R2-D2. It's not a Nintendo game. It's rated kids through adults. Yeah, you're right. I almost was playing video game 20 questions. All right, God, I'm trying to think about because all the sort of 2D 90s video games, I can't recall too many being like, look how cute this is. It felt like they were all about being like radical, like Sonic the Hedgehog was kind of, at least aside from the Nintendo stuff.
Sorry, did you land upon a genre already?
No, I guess I didn't.
Okay.
But I'm thinking because of the rating that I'm in 2D territory here.
Well, why don't you throw out a guess and I'll give you some more information.
Okay. Oh my God. I'm trying to think of something that's friggin' cute. Is this Mrs. Pac-Man?
Not Miss Pac-Man. Some more meta information. This was released in 1997.
Oh.
And it is primarily known on the PlayStation.
Okay. My second guess is Spyro the Dragon.
No, but a good guess. I would say a game that well known would probably have a
better description. Oh yeah, and a Metascore.
Critical consensus of some kind.
Okay.
But, with that, I'll give you positive and negative review. So a 10 review. Overall, 95%. Gameplay, 7 out of 10. Graphics for me, 8 out of 10. Story, 9 out of 10. Game length, 9 out of 10. Characters, 9 out of 10. Level, area design, 10 out of 10. Atmosphere, 10 out of 10. Sound effects, 8 out of 10. Soundtrack, 9 out of 10. Replay value, 8 out of 10. I admit I'm biased towards this game. It was a childhood favorite of mine.
Yeah.
But as a child, this game was a pretty magical experience for me. The variety of levels is matched by very few games. The music is awesome and so memorable. And for a children's game, the world is very atmospheric. It would be a huge shame if we never saw a reboot of this game at some point.
Wow.
And the lowest score is actually a 4 rather than a 0. And it is written in Spanish. So I've gone onto Google Translate.
Oh my
So
God.
let's get to the general gist of what this Spanish reviewer wanted to say about this game.
Okay.
I can really say that Redacted is not a good platformer, and already reading the history of its development does not surprise me. The tank controls really spoil the experience, and together with the camera, they make Redacted a difficult game, but for bad reasons. This, more than anything, is noticeable from the middle of the game onwards, which with platforms and millimeter jumps, in addition to super simple bosses that are much easier than normal levels. Another big flaw that the game has is that if in a level you grab part of the collectibles but not all of them, they are lost and you have to get them back. What a disgrace. The truth is that it does not do anything new and interesting for the genre either. It feels repetitive, frustrating, and highly generic for a Redacted game.
Wow.
Goes on quite a bit longer, but that's probably enough for now. If you need more, I can sprinkle some more in.
So it's a game that is cute. It doesn't have a Metascore. This person is hoping, or one person thinks it deserves a reboot, and this other person thinks it's no good, or that it doesn't do anything for the genre, which I think is platformer. I think is what we said.
Right.
Cute platformer PlayStation. Cute platformer PlayStation. Ryan. You were alive. You owned a PlayStation.
In 1997 as well. So, a time when platformers were at a bit of a turning point themselves.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's 1997 is that late PlayStation?
No, it's not late. It's kind of mid-era, but it's like a year after the launch of the N64, and so things were getting a little bit more competitive at this time.
Okay. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna say it's Crash Bandicoot. Oh God, I'm gonna stick with it. It would have a Metascore though. Hold on, wait, hold on. I'm losing my confidence on Crash Bandicoot. Is this? Oh my God. I don't really. I don't know.
But if Discuss doesn't get it, then I'll read the rest of this negative review and see if that kind of clicks it for you.
Okay. Man, I'm just trying to a platformer on PlayStation. It's like Crash was the big one, but there must have been like a second one that people were less like hyped out about. But everything that comes to mind is like that was also the era when we were getting, the licensed stuff, all the sort of Disney, the Toy Story stuff was big at this point. Okay, well, I'm gonna say I know it's wrong, but I'm gonna say Crash Bandicoot.
Okay, that's not correct.
Damn it!
But I'll continue on with this negative description and see if it helps. The graphics are also not impressive, even for their time, having gems like Crash Bandicoot 1 and 2, or the first Spyro, which is unfortunate since Redacted either does not do it or does everything but worse. If Redacted had come out in 1995 or early 1996 as one of the first 3D platformers ever, I'd understand its status, but the fact that it looks and plays worse than the first Crash Bandicoot or even Super Mario 64 having come out in mid-97 is a shame.
Is it
and that
Gex?
I personally... Well, let's get to the end of this and let's see what we feel at that point. And that I personally hate Mario 64, but that's for another time. What I can highlight a lot about Redacted is the general charisma that the game and the music transmit. Very ambient, very emotional. It is excellent in this regard. Too bad that the rest of the sections have not devoted enough perfectionism to it. Redacted is pretty overrated here at least, and in part, I think people like him quite a bit out of nostalgia. I will also respect personal opinions, but I will say what I have to say. Redacted is a regular and highly generic 3D platform game. I only recommend it to hang out.
You only recommend it to hang out.
Maybe that's a Google Translate thing.
Okay.
I wouldn't put it on that reviewer.
Got it. Was I right about Gex?
Well, remember, K through A.
Kid through adult. Wait a minute. Does that mean Gex is out because it's too racy?
It's a bit racy for a K through A.
Yeah, I guess so. And it's on the PlayStation.
Mm-hmm. Think about, there's a fairly prominent 3D platformer that I don't think people think that well of these days. Is
it Ape Escape?
No, maybe you haven't. Maybe you don't know this game.
Maybe I don't know this game.
Egg on my face then. All right, so I think that's enough guesses. I would normally read the unredacted pitch, but I did that at the beginning. This is 1997's Croc Legend of the Gobos.
Oh, I do know the Croc. I couldn't summon him though. He's in my mind, but he's not. I don't have him at the ready. Poor Croc.
That's okay.
Jesus, no Metacritic score for Croc.
Nope, nothing.
The no Metacritic score really messed me up because is Croc that obscure? I guess so.
I don't think it's obscure. I think it was just like before the time of online reviews. Like probably they just didn't care enough about like backfilling from magazine reviews, like games that came before Metacritic even existed as a site.
Yeah, I guess I guess you may. No, Sly Cooper was way later, right?
That was PlayStation 2.
Was, yeah. Croc, you got me. You fucking got me. Unbelievable.
Right on. Well, that'll do it for us this week. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you again next week.
Bye.